The Dukes of Dice are brought to you by Arcane Wonders, game toppers, excellently timed special guests, and listeners like you.
Welcome to the Duchy. It's time for another episode of the Dukes of Dice podcast, a proud member of the Dice Tower Network.
Coming to you from the Duchy, the New City, Albuquerque, New Mexico, and the Gateway City, St. Louis, Missouri, it's The Dukes of Dice, a podcast about board, card, and occasionally role-playing games. Today, the Dukes are joined by Dan King, the Game Boy Geek. Together, they'll review Pan Am from Prospero Hall. Then they take a look back at their reviews of Fox and the Forest Duet and Wavelength in a Dukes quadruple take. And now, The Dukes of Dice.
Hey there, everybody. Welcome back to the podcast. This is Sean.
And Alex.
And Dan.
Hey there, Dan. Welcome back. Despite all of my best efforts to ghost you, you still made it on.
Dude, I'm sitting here and when I listen to Alex do this in real time, and he goes, The Dukes of Dice, I can't help it. That song, the intro song, was just in my head and I wanted to start humming it.
You could have. It's fine. We can edit that out or edit it in either way. I think after the show, during the end credits, you should just start humming, and we'll have that underneath instead of the typical theme song.
Oh yeah, that'd be great.
Your edition of it.
I think last year I did when you said the news, I think I hummed the news and you put that in.
I was going to say, yeah, I think we have various instances of you performing different pieces of our music in different episodes. And yeah, last year was the news. Well, welcome back, Dan. We're very happy to have you, and we'll find out a little bit what's going on. But just real quick, need to name this episode. It's episode 245, which, thanks to our guild member Matthew S., we're titling Frequency Flyer Miles, which encapsulates a bunch of what we're talking about. Of course, we're talking about Pan Am, a game about an airline company. So there's the flyer miles and frequent flyer miles, but of course we're also talking about Wavelength in our double take, which has the frequency. What was, Dan, you were able to supply the missing component that also brought in Fox and the Forest Duet. Do you remember what that was?
Well, I was just saying, when you go hiking, there's always mile markers and trail markers with how many miles the hike is through the forest. So I see those all the time.
Okay, perfect. So yeah, great job, Matthew S. Thanks for that awesome episode title. And we get all of our help naming our episodes from our amazing Board Game Geek Guild number 2008. And we've got 5 runners-up that we will share with you at the end of the episode. So that is that. All right. Well, Dan, how you doing, buddy?
It has been quite the year since we've talked last.
I was listening back to this, and the last time we did this, Sean was too busy, as he still is. Sean, forever busy Sean, as we like to call him. Yep. It was just Dan and I doing the review, which we'll have the quadruple take on later. But it was right before the expletive hit the you-know-what? Wait, no, just the fan.
Yeah, you can say the fan.
Yeah, I can say the fan on the Dice Tower Network.
Totally
okay,
allowed.
Yes. It was right before that all happened, and the amount of things that have happened to me in the past year and the amount of things that have happened in the industry in the past year is absolutely wild. And so, Dan, you being in this full time, deeply sunk into this at this point, what has the past year looked like for you covering and being in the board game space?
It's been just as crazy, I think, as other people. It's, I was at Gamma when the lockdown really hit, right? And then people were just leaving Gamma in droves, right? And then they once, there was that day where the NBA canceled their season, did this and that. It was the third day of Gamma and everyone just left. And it was never the same since then. But, I tried to do things to help as much as I could. I invested in a bunch of new equipment and started streaming things last year. And I was streaming a lot of games that you could play along with me. Lots of little roll and writes and things like that. I even had a little survey systems in real time set up so people who were on their phones and they were watching the stream live, and I had them playing Naya against Bruno Cathala live, which was kind of cool. And the majority vote would do the move, and literally the audience was playing against Bruno Cathala. So I tried to do a lot of streaming last year to help the people that were stuck at home and wanted to do something fun, and they could play along with me. So I tried to kind of pivot with the times.
How do you think the virtual convention scene worked? Because I was into it initially, like, oh, this is cool. And it just has kind of fallen off since then. It doesn't seem like it's made a huge impact necessarily, but what's been your read on the virtual convention pivot that's had to happen in the past year?
I know that some people have really enjoyed them, but they weren't necessarily something that I was into. I'm on the computer every day, all day anyway, so it's like the last place I want to be in my free time. So for me, it wasn't a great fit for me, but I know that other people out there had different opinions about it.
Yeah. It's just been really interesting to see, and I'm curious how things will bounce back, especially with, now that we have everything back on the calendar, mostly for later in the year. I'm interested to see what this year looks like in games and whether it's a quick bounce back or kind of a slow crawl back. I'm curious. Are you intending to go to any conventions later in the year?
Yeah, I mean, I'm hopeful that the ones later in the year will happen, and I'm hoping I can go. If there was any little silver lining from last year is that we didn't just get pummeled with like a ridiculous amount of games all at like two major like points, like Essen
Right.
and Gen Con. If for one thing they kind of trickled through, which made it a little easier to kind of cover games because you weren't just in these ridiculously crazy peak moments a couple times during the year and then having like not as much through the other year. So that was like a silver lining.
Nice. So given all of that, was there a lot of fear going into your Kickstarter this year that some of the kind of trickle effects of the past year might have hampered things? Because it hasn't been the case, but was there fear there?
Oh, of course. There's a fear every year before you push the button to go live in a Kickstarter. I mean, it takes like 4 months to plan something like that, and you never know how it's going to go. And last year, actually, we were just talking about Gamma, and that's kind of like when everything sort of got locked down. And my campaign from last year was on its last week, and the campaign was doing better than ever. And when that last week hit and everything locked down, I mean, the campaign lost, I think, almost 20% of its value, like in that 1 week, because I mean, it was the craziest time ever, right? And so you never know. So yeah, it's always an exciting, but at the same time, fearful moment anytime you push that button, because you just work so hard for it and you plan so much and you don't know what's going to happen. I mean, Kickstarter is one of those things that you can't predict even what games are going to do well, right? You'll look at Kickstarters and you'll go, wow, that's only doing 25 or 30,000. This should be doing a lot more. Then you see something that are really high and you're like, whoa, how it's really hard to predict in games, and it's even harder to predict in something like this.
Yeah, but kudos to you. I mean, it's clearly the community showed up, and I think there are folks who still find a lot of value in what you're doing, and obviously I think the success of the Kickstarter shows that. So I mentioned kind of in the pre-intro that this is very perfectly timed. So in terms of the Kickstarter, when is it running until, and what is new this year? What's setting this year's one apart?
So it is going to be running until Tuesday, March 2nd, which means, but if you're one of the Dukes of Dicers that downloads this the day it's released, you've got about 24 hours. If you do it the day after, you might have like 5 hours left. And so if you do listen to this a little bit later, like during the week, and it's already over, just hang in there, because about 2 weeks to 3 weeks afterwards, we'll open up possibly, the pledge manager, maybe some late pledges and stuff, but you can still support if you want to that way. I'm not sure. There were some cool things in there. I mean, obviously, you always just hope it's more people are enjoying your stuff, right? But from an extra thank you reward standpoint, there's some really cool resource packs there with all these different types of things like cows and sheep and milk and stuff like that. But we also got one of the first sort of promo cards for Lost Ruins of Arnak, which is very popular, a custom one with a saxophone on it. We brought back the very popular Splendor tile with me on it, which has been like the most popular thing ever, and we were able to get that reprinted. And I think Everdell, there was a really cool legendary bard with a saxophone on his back, which is a custom one, and Everdell is very popular. I think those, from a promo standpoint, I think those three are doing really well. Plus, this year I'm including a lot more than I have in the past years, and that might help too.
Certainly can't hurt, I wouldn't think.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it's definitely doing better than any other year, so it's really good, but it's also the year I needed it the most, because as of about August of last year, I've been doing this full time.
Yeah, congratulations on that, by the way.
Super sweet. Yeah.
Well, it's not as cool as it seems. It wasn't like I had a decision. I've been an engineer for 20 years, and with COVID and everything, almost our entire team lost their jobs last year. So it was kind of like, well, I was kind of already almost doing it full time anyways. And now I was doing 30 plus hours anyways for the last 7 years on my channel. So it wasn't that big of a pivot, but at the same time, well, I'm doing the best I can with it.
It was kind of the final shove, right? The final shove into it.
Yeah. It's definitely a whole different ballgame when it's the thing that you use to eat.
The stakes are a little different, huh?
For sure.
Oh man. Well, good deal. So yeah, check out Dan's Kickstarter. And I will tell you, Kickstarter search engine is terrible. So if you type in Game Boy all one word, you will not find his Kickstarter page. If you type in Game/Boy Geek, that works a little bit better. So yeah, we'll have a link to it to it in the description.
I was going to say better yet. Let's just put a link in the description.
Well, yeah, we're going to do that, of course. Of course, we're going to do that. In any case, yeah, check it out. It runs through March 2nd. But Dan, that's only one small part of why you're here. Of course, you have to earn your keep here. We got to talk about some games.
Let's do it.
What have you been playing lately?
I've actually been playing a lot of stuff. When I was planning on what thing to talk about, I had so many, but I think I wanted to cover a game that I think is going to be in my top 10 at the end of the year. I think it has a chance to be at least nominated, if not win the Spiel des Jahres. It's from coveted designer Michael Kiesling, and I think this should be getting as much buzz, hype, whatever you want to call it, as Azul did when it came out. Because it's about as simple as Azul, but it has as much, if not more depth than Azul. This is called Renature. It's from Pegasus Spiel, but it's being brought to us by Capstone Games in North America. This is as you imagine, as I was talking about Azul, this is sort of a family-weight, abstractish style game that is based off of dominoes, where you are placing these really beautiful dominoes. So here's the theme: is that the world's polluted, and you are bringing in plants, trees, and animals to renature and get rid of the pollution and stuff like that. So you're placing dominoes of these beautifully designed looking animals, and you are trying to control areas that you're placing the dominoes around. And it's a battle of like, I need to put a domino here. And when you place one there, you're placing a tree in an area, and you're trying to win area control. But it is very much like a classic Spiel des Jahres nominee, Las Vegas. It's the dice game where you roll dice and you're trying to win money for casinos. And that game has a really interesting thing where, like, if people tie, they're not there. And this uses that same mechanism, and I love it. And on top of that, it also uses something that Las Vegas used, which is neutral dice. In this case, there's no dice. You get these neutral pieces. So you're placing these dominoes. You're fighting over areas to try to get first place majority points. But you can place neutral pieces to totally hose up people over, and you can try to make it so that they tie, meaning they're not there. And if they're not there, you get all the points. This is a very aggressive, mean area control game where you can pull a lot of interesting tactics to screw people over. The mechanisms are pretty simple. There's more things going on than I mentioned. There's cloud tokens that give you special abilities, and you could do crazy things with those. But this game, I'm telling you, you can teach it to people that don't play games, and they'll get it right away. And you can play it with gamers, and there's so much depth here. This game is unbelievable.
So I literally, as you were talking about this, Dan, pulled it up, looked it up on Miniature Market.
Let me guess, sold out? Is it sold out?
No, it's not sold. Okay. Absolutely not sold out. As of the time of this recording,
the first wave sold out as soon as it came out.
No, they per Miniature Market they have more than 20 in stock. So
okay,
I don't know. Sean and I have a little bit of planning to do. You might be hearing more about this game sooner rather than later. Not sure.
Yeah, after that wild goose chase you sent me on. But anyway, moving on.
What wild goose chase did I send you on?
Well, don't worry about it. Not important.
I know the wild goose chase I sent you on. Yeah, fair enough. Anyway, not important.
Yeah, if you want to get more detail and you're listening to this, I've done a full review on it that you can just easily look up, and it'll show you all the nooks and crannies of this game. It's amazing.
What song did you play for the sax solo?
Gosh, I don't remember.
What?
Wait, you know what? You know what, Dan? If I didn't know any better, I would say that you're on our show just to promote your channel and your Kickstarter. What's up with that?
What are you talking about? We're talking about games. No, Renature, you guys have to try this. I'm telling you. I bet your Empire has it.
Maybe. I mean, it looks interesting. It looks definitely more an Alex style game than a Sean style game, but that's not necessarily that's not a bad thing. Jeez Louise.
It's a capstone game, man.
It's part of their Simply Complex line.
Oh, they're Simply Complex? Okay. Oh, then I love it. Perfect. Good job, Clay.
Yeah, I was going to say that makes it a Sean game right there, because you were already in on the Builders as an example.
I'm telling you, Sean, when you play this at first, you'll play it the first time and you'll be like, okay, this is pretty simple. And then as you play it more and more and you see little things happen, you go, oh my gosh, there's way more here in the subtleties than meets the eye.
For the listeners who were just yelling at their podcast device, I meant the Climbers, not the Builders. Different games.
Okay.
Anyway, cool. Well, that's Renature. I will definitely look into that, and who knows? You might hear more on that one. Sean, what have you been playing?
Nothing, absolutely nothing. But I'll break in with a news item. But why don't to have everything kind of together in groups? Why don't you tell us about a game?
So I got something off of my shelf of opportunity. Or shame, depending on your perspective.
No, it's the cupboard of undiscovered delights that you said. See, I listen to you. Not only do I listen to you, I memorize your phrases, Alex. How about that?
Well, how do you not know what sax solos you're playing on your own channel?
Because
I don't understand.
I pay more attention to you guys than myself. How about that?
Oh my goodness.
By the way, the cupboard of undiscovered delights is something very different in my home. But anyway.
Oh boy. All right, I'm not going to get into that. I will get into, though, discussing Targi, the expansion. So Targi, for folks who don't know, is that is a fantastic, and I mean fantastic, all-world two-player game brought to you by the fine folks at Cosmos. This is one that I thought would be too complex for Abby, would be out of her wheelhouse, but no, she really enjoys it. It's a resource management game / tableau building / worker placement, kind of. It has a lot of different little mechanics all baked into one, but you're placing workers on the outside of this grid, which will give you actions, and then the intersections that they make will give you additional actions. You'll be using resources to buy cards. You can also trade them in for points. It's an absolutely staggeringly brilliant game. I had bought the expansion for this months ago, and just hadn't had the right opportunity to break it out, mainly because Abby and I have been obsessively playing cribbage for the past several weeks. I mean, we'll play a best of 3 just about every night these days. But no, Targi's expansion adds a number of things. It takes all of the tribal cards and completely swaps them out. It adds in a mechanic which this will make more sense for folks who've been in Elysium, but it adds this sort of one-time use mechanic where you can use an ability or power on a card that you've acquired once at a time of your choosing. And then there are ways that can recharge over the course of the game. It also adjusts how spaces like the Noble work, where the Noble's typically a way you could play a stored card, but now this, when you discard a card, you get bonus resources. It adds water, which can sort of serve as a wild card of a resource. It can substitute for gold. It can substitute for basic goods at different cost amounts. It also adds these sand dune cards, which are additional worker placement spots, which can get you additional power. They're really powerful spaces, but they give you fewer intersections in the middle. So I think the first couple of rounds of this, it was kind of, is this a little bit too much? Did they go too crazy with this? Did they open this up too much? And the answer is no. By the time we got to the end of this, I think we were both on the same page. This opened it up just the right amount. It had some really cool, interesting mechanics. Targi itself is fantastic by itself. This is not you have to have this expansion to enjoy the game kind of expansion. This isn't one that revolutionizes it so much that I would have to play Targi with the expansion at all times. But I think I'd prefer to play it with the expansion. The one thing I'll say on Targi the expansion, though, is it comes in a box that is the identical size of Targi itself, which to me is obnoxious. I wish there was some better way of kind of combining those materials or adjusting or playing within the limits of that so that I just had to have one box instead of the 2 for this one. I think you could feasibly combine, but I think there's enough reason to keep them separate. In any case, that's the only kind of annoyance I have with this, but otherwise, really solid expansion. And if you love Targi, which you should, this is a one you should seek out. So that's Targi the expansion.
So I thought at first when you said I played Targi the expansion, I thought you were just being lazy and didn't bother to look up the name of the expansion. But in fact, that's the name of the expansion, the expansion. I had no idea, and that seems really lazy, but that's fine because Targi's a really good game, and it sounds like the expansion is also really good.
Well, the other thing too, though, is the box is identical. Like I mean, it has some slight differences. It's a different character, but color scheme wise, it looks the same, and it's just the expansion below it. So you could easily mistake this for Targi itself. In any case, Dan, have you played with the expansion?
I have not.
Okay.
Sorry, I was just.
Do you like?
Yeah, Targi. It was one of those ones that for 2-player games, I know a lot of people love it, and I'm not one of them.
Man,
I like the placing the workers and the grid and that whole thing. It's just it felt too. Yeah, it's like the whole resource thing. It was just like I've seen that type of stuff before. I don't know. I know a lot of people love this game.
we gotta get guests on here with better taste. This game's amazing.
Speaking of better tastes, Sean, I just realized that I just made the biggest blunder of all time by not making Alex salivate at my game choice, and I think he's already played this, but I played the finished copy of Baseball Highlights, the dice game, last night.
Okay. I played an early.
You played an early, but I know for a fact that they have developed this a ton since you played it. So I should have mentioned that just to make Alex miffed.
Yeah.
So first mention, but also thumbs up, thumbs down. What are we talking about with this one?
I love it. And so I played it 2 nights ago with 4, and then I played it last night. I tried that solo, and I tried the football version solo because it was a Football Highlights, the dice game too. I played them both solo. Both games, they were between 1 run and 1 point. Like, Mike is ridiculous. That guy is a genius. But anyway, I really love it. I'm pretty burnt out on roller rides, but I got to tell you, man, I loved it. I loved it.
Okay.
I don't want to give away too much more because it's going to be coming on Kickstarter in March. And so I'll be doing some more videos and some more details about it. But it's a roll and write that has lots of combo building, kind of like Ganchan Clever. I check this, which will allow me to check that, which will allow me to check that type of stuff. But you're playing, simultaneously, but kind of soloish at the same time too. So it's really good. It's very different from the board game for sure. If you didn't like Baseball Highlights, the regular game, doesn't mean you won't like this. In fact, you probably need to know even less baseball with this game than you did with the original. But anyway, sorry, I cheated and did 2 games, but I forgot. We really need to miff Alex here, Sean. I knew you'd approve.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
You had to make up for Sean not having a game at all, so it's okay.
Well, I'm a busy. Wow, I'm a busy man, busy individual. But here's what I'll say. Mariah just got her Pfizer vaccine, her first shot today. Raquel and I are scheduled for our first shots on Saturday, 2 days from now, when we're recording the podcast. So the only thing I'd say is there's no children's vaccines yet. I know they're still doing clinical trials, but not that obviously means when all of that happens, go crazy. But I'll be more inclined to do some masked in-person gaming, and there's still a little bit of that going on, but I'm still kind of a little squeamish. But so I don't know. Let's be hopeful. But I'll be honest, man. I can't play online, and I'm just at the end of the day, I don't know. It's bad for a board game podcaster who can't get in plays of games to talk about recent plays. Not gonna lie.
I got to tell you, I'm super jealous because we're not at the point of scheduling for folks in kind of our grouping, so to speak, Abby and I's grouping. And I know in general, New Mexico is far ahead of where Missouri is.
Yeah.
I don't know where Arizona is on the vaccination timeline, but I know that New Mexico has been relatively killing it. So super jealous, happy for you, but definitely jealous.
Yeah, very, very excited. So yeah, we'll see. And hopefully that means, a little bit more in-person gaming, which will mean more recent plays to talk about on the show. So there's that. But there was some incredible news that came out today that I have to talk about. And of course, I think, Alex, you can guess what it might be related to.
Is it related to Magic the Gathering?
Oh my goodness, Alex. What a fantastic guess. But okay, again, I'm not going to go too deep down this hole, but today, Wizards of the Coast, the publishers of Magic the Gathering, announced something. Now, this is big, Alex, and I think you will recognize how big this is. They announced something called Universes Beyond. It's this new line of Magic that's going to incorporate non-Magic IPs in a more robust fashion. And that's people are either very excited for this or they're very against this. So there's been little bits of this in the last couple of years. There was this My Little Pony, which was like 5 or 6 cards, and they were silver bordered, so they weren't legal in any format. Then there was these Godzilla alternate art cards, alternate art, alternate names, but they were functionally equivalent and tournament legal to certain other cards from this set called Ikoria that was themed around these big monsters. And then there was a very divisive release that came out last year called The Walking Dead Secret Lair, which was very divisive because it was now, not just was it another IP, but they were also legal in many formats. And they were not analogous to certain cards. They were functionally unique, which was problematic. Plus they weren't released into the wild. They were sold directly by Wizards of the Coast through their Secret Lair program. So there's that background. So this Universes Beyond, which they just announced today, they're going to be including 2 things, at least initially. The first is Lord of the Rings, which is mind-blowing to me. Absolutely mind-blowing. I have played, there was the Middle-earth CCG in the 90s. I played that. I've played the Fantasy Flight Lord of the Rings LCG. I'm a huge Lord of the Rings fan. By the way, great channel to watch if you're into Lord of the Rings is Nerd of the Rings, which I've been just consuming all of their content the last couple of weeks. Really deep dives into Lord of the Rings, especially like first age and second age stuff. Really, really highly recommend that channel. Huge Lord of the Rings fan. And it sounds like this may be not just a couple cards, but possibly an entire set of cards. These aren't going to be tournament legal in the sense of standard legal, the most current set of legality. We're not sure if there's going to be older legality with the older formats or like in Commander, which is the most popular format. But Lord of the Rings, I mean, that's pretty interesting. And in addition, it kind of fits within the Magic aesthetic, right? There's that fantasy aesthetic. The second IP, though, does not, and it's very weird. And I think I'm only on board because I like the IP, and I think more people probably are not on board. And it's Warhammer 40,000.
Okay, that to me fits better than Lord of the Rings fits.
Okay, and I think Warhammer 40,000 kind of fits because it is sort of a fantasy setting, even though it's in the year 40,000 and it's spaceships and whatnot. There's very much a magic feel to it. There's a very much a fantasy feel to it. It kind of in the same way Star Wars kind of has a fantasy element to it as well. I think this one is probably going to be more divisive just because on the surface it is very much more sci-fi. And again, we don't know how this is going to work. Whether we're just talking about some secret lair release drops, like 4 or 5 cards, or if it's going to be this full set. So these cards that are in the Universes Beyond, they're going to have a different frame. To me, that doesn't mean it's a different colored border. So right now the borders are black. Your standard cards are black bordered, but there's a frame inside of that that has been standard since like 2007 or so. And they're going to change it for this. And then there's also going to be a special set symbol that's going to identify it. So I don't know. I think I'm more on the side of relatively optimistic, and we'll just kind of have to wait and see. But I could certainly see how this might anger a lot of Magic fans. And keep in mind, I'm someone that also enjoys Warhammer 40,000. I mean, I I shudder to think how much money I've spent on Magic cards and Warhammer miniatures over the last 25 years. Like,
is it more or less than you spent on your first wedding, or than was spent on your first wedding?
Well, I didn't spend anything on my first wedding.
Yeah, no, I know. That's why that said then was spent.
It's probably less.
Okay,
but not by much. Not by much.
Interesting. I can see why this is big news, and I don't care.
I know.
Sorry. I'm glad you got a chance to share it. I don't care. It did remind me that I want to play some Blood Bowl. It did remind me that I'd want to get some more plays of Blood Bowl in at some point in some format. whether it's through the Blood Bowl video game implementation or in person on tabletop. I don't know when that would happen, but
which I think they just released Blood Bowl 3, if I'm not mistaken. Which I definitely want to pick that up on Steam and play that.
Is it out for the Nintendo Switch? Because if it's not, I have no way of playing.
I'm not sure.
The answer is almost certainly no. So yeah. Well, very good. Well, that's what we've been playing, or at least thinking about this past week. After the break, our featured review.
Well, we talked a lot the last couple episodes about the Freedom 5 Kickstarter that was up from our friends over at arcanewonders.com. And shucks, wouldn't you know it, the campaign is over. A very successful campaign. They had almost $1 million in pledges, $944,247. Oh my goodness, that's so much money. Now, don't fret though, because if you didn't back in time, you can still do a late pledge. You can get the Citizen Pledge for $49. You can do the Hero Pledge, which is for the Kickstarter exclusive edition, for $109. So head on over to freedom5game.com. That's freedom5, F-I-V-E, game.com. That'll send you over to their late pledge site where you can take a look at all the different options for getting in a late pledge. Not sure how long this is going to be up and running for, so I would say hurry, act now. Definitely check it out. That's freedom5game.com. Additionally, check out all of Arcane Wonders' other awesome titles at arcanewonders.com. All right, go check it out.
Sean!
Why do all our ads have to stop, or start rather? Why do all of our ads have to start with one of us saying the other person's name? Alex! Do people not know what they're listening to? And do they not recognize how distinct your voice is from my voice?
Well, Alex, I think that we're completely distinct as human beings and individuals.
I agree. For example, Sean, which is you, not me, you have a very lovely game topper, do you not?
I do, in fact, Alex, have a wonderful game topper. I enjoy it so very much. It's something where I don't have to have a full-on, all-purpose, all-the-time game table. I can have a game table when I want a game table and have a normal table when I don't want a game table.
So, Sean, I hear that, well, shoot, the Kickstarter's over, right? The Kickstarter's been over for 6 months? How on earth can I get my own game topper, Sean?
Well, Alex, it turns out it's not too late. You can go to Game Topper's website at GameToppersLLC.com, and there are still some toppers you can get. Some of the packages have already sold out, but there's still some things out there. You get a Baker Street bundle. You can get some of their amazing thematic game mats. Sean, I got a little secret for you.
Is the secret...
Wait, no, Alex, I have a secret for
Sean, based on this fact that our buddy Berkey is a very industrious fellow?
It is, in fact, Alex, that our friend Perky is a very industrious fellow. And keep your ears peeled, Alex. There's another Kickstarter coming later in 2021.
Should I keep them peeled or should I keep my ears to the ground?
You should keep them somewhere where they're going to be able to hear this news.
Okay, fair enough. Well, if you want to learn more about Game Toppers and the awesome products that they have, you should head on over to GameToppersLLC.com.
It's always a showstopper when you're playing on a Game Topper. This is your captain speaking. We're at our cruising altitude, about 15,000 feet. On your left, you'll see the Grand Canyon. On your right, you'll also see the Grand Canyon. We are talking this week about Pan Am, game about airplanes and about flying them. Hope you're relaxed and comfortable, buckled in for our review.
All right, well, like Alex mentioned, we're talking about Pan Am, designed by Prospero Hall, with art credited by Prospero Hall. And this is a Funko game. You know, I got to say, I'm very curious, who are the people behind Prospero Hall? I feel like this is a relic from, days past when it was just, this game is designed by Hasbro. You know what I mean? Do we know? Do we know who these people are?
So it's all listed on the website. There's a giant team listed on Prospero Hall's website. Dan, you might have more insight into this.
I don't. I looked up on the website once before too and was like, who are these people? And it's just like, yeah, they just knock things out of the park. And I was curious too. I even just wondered, like, how do they handle all the, like, who designs what? How do they figure out all the royalties? Oh my gosh, CPA must go crazy.
So they have 7 folks on game development internally listed on their website. So yeah.
Well, let's talk about Pan Am. So this is a board game where you are taking on the role of an airline company, not Pan Am. You are not Pan Am in any of these scenarios, but you're hoping to get gobbled up by Pan Am, essentially. And so Pan Am is this now defunct airline. I think it filed for bankruptcy in like the early 90s or late 80s or something like that. But they were on the forefront of modern aviation. Is there such a thing as modern aviation? Because there's no like ancient aviation, right? Unless we're talking about like Icarus.
Yeah, well, no, but there's like the early days of aviation, I guess. Yeah, okay.
They pioneered commercial.
I think it's funny that you said the word right after early aviation.
Fair enough.
That was on purpose, wasn't it, Sean?
Sorry for all of our listeners in Kitty Hawk. So yeah, this is a game, like I said, where you are basically trying to claim different routes from different cities and then have Pan Am expand and eat up your routes because you're going to get some money for it. Ultimately, the object of this game is to have the most stock in Pan Am at the end of the game, and you're going to do that by collecting or by paying for stock shares. So this is a worker placement game, and it's one of those worker placement games where you place workers, but you don't resolve the worker effect right away. You're going to resolve it at the end of every round in a particular order and a particular priority, depending on how things were placed. So ultimately, what you're trying to do each round is you're trying to claim these routes. And so the main board that you have, it's a map of the world and major cities that existed in, the 40s, 50s, 60s. Some of these cities don't exist anymore. Not that they don't exist, they just had different names. And these routes are size 1, size 2, size 3, size 4. There are 4 different types of planes, and at the beginning of the game, you only have access to size 1 and 2 planes, and you need those particular sizes to claim routes of that particular size. And in order to claim a route, you need to have landing rights in the 2 adjacent cities. And there are 4 ways to claim a landing right, or to have a landing right. You can have one of the matching destination cards of that city, because there's a whole deck of destination cards. Or you could have previously built an airport on one of these cities. Or you can discard a destination card, not with that city name, but that's in that same region. So you've got South America, North America, Asia, etc. Or you can simply discard two destination cards of the same region. Basically, that kind of creates a wild. So you need to be able to say, I can claim this route because I have landing rights in these 2 adjacent cities. Whatever combination you need to do, that's what you get. So that's what you're trying to do. And any time that you're claiming a route, you're going to increase the income you have at the end of the round. You're going to place one of the appropriate size planes to show that that's your route. Okay. So with that said, here's how the turn works. First thing that you're going to do is you're going to flip over an event card. The event card's going to give you three bits of information. First, it's going to tell you what happens to the value of Pan Am stock. So it might set it a particular value, or it may increase it a certain amount or decrease it a certain amount. The second thing it's going to do is have some sort of weird effect. Maybe it's going to double income in a particular round. Maybe it's going to pay you out right now for having a certain number of routes on the board, whatever. And then the third thing it's going to tell you is how many Pan Am expansion rolls are going to happen at the end of the round. And I'll talk about that more in just a sec. So once you do the events, then you're going to start placing out your workers, your engineers, I think they're called. And that starts with any of the priority workers, which are leftovers from a previous round that went to claim directive cards. And these directive cards have special effects that might give you some sort of action, some sort of bonus, or possibly at the end of the game let you buy extra stock for free. Lots of weird things that these things can do. They kind of remind me of intrigue cards from, say, Lords of Waterdeep. Okay, so you're going to place workers out, and there are different spots you can place them, A through E. A, B, and C are auction worker placement spaces. So you can place something there at the lowest level. Sometimes it's 0, sometimes it's 2. And then someone can outbid you, basically place above you, and then you get your engineer back to place it again on a subsequent turn. And it's interesting because, again, it's this kind of auction thing. But then there are other worker placement spots that have multiple options or multiple spots for various players that are not exclusive. So that's pretty interesting. So that A spot is where you're going to bid on being able to build an airport for a certain cost from the money you start with. And you start with, I think, $12 at the beginning of the game. And then the B spot actually has 4 different spots for face-up destination cards. And again, you're bidding on these cards. And then the C spot at the start of the game has 2 spots, the size 1 planes and the size 2 planes. And in later rounds, you'll unlock the size 3. And in still a later round, you'll unlock the size 4. And there again are auction spots for you to be able to purchase these extra planes to add to your fleet. The D spot is what lets you claim routes, and you can place multiple workers there on subsequent turns to be able to claim different routes. And then the E spot are those aforementioned directive cards where you'll be able to draw cards from that deck, but also those workers are going to get left on the board for the start of the next round, and they have priority to be placed in the next worker placement phase before you kind of resort to the turn order. All right. So you resolve all of those at the end of the worker placement round. People are claiming routes, they're increasing their income and whatnot. And then you have the Pan Am phase. And so the very first thing that's going to happen is you roll this expansion die a number of times as indicated by the events card. And on each of these expansion rolls, there might be 1 or 2 times that Pan Am expands out. So Pan Am starts in Miami, and there are basically 3 different routes. There's sort of the South American, and then this North American / European, and then this, I guess it's Africa / Asia route, I think. And for every time that you roll this route out, Pan Am is going to take one of its Pan Am counters and move along that particular route. If there is a player's plane that's previously claimed that route, that plane's going to go back to their fleet, and then you're going to get paid a certain bonus depending on the size of that route. I think it's $5 for a size 1 route. I want to say $9 for a size 2 route, and it goes up from there. Or there's a one side of the die, it's a standard 6-sided die that just has the Pan Am symbol. And if you roll that, then in turn order, every player can choose to sell one of their routes. A route of their choice doesn't matter. Again, getting that bonus. But anytime that you lose a route to Pan Am, you're also going to decrease the income. So a level 1 route gives you 1 income, 2 gives you 2 income, etc. Also, all of your airports give you 1 income. At the end of the Pan Am expansion, you're going to then get paid your income, whatever your income level is. And then at the current level of the Pan Am stock price, in turn order, you have a choice to buy as many or as few Pan Am stock certificates as you want at that price, realizing that you need that money also for the next round to pay for airports, pay for destination tiles, pay for new planes to your fleet, etc. All right, 7 rounds go by. At the end of the round, at the end of the game, whoever has acquired the most Pan Am stock certificates is going to win, and you're the winner of Pan Am. I don't know what that signifies, especially since Pan Am goes bankrupt in the early 90s. So yeah. All right. That's how you play Pan Am. That was a much easier rules explanation than Alma Mater, Alex.
Yeah, I would say a million times easier.
You know what? Let's just do light games from now on, or lighter games now that I think about it. It's less work for me.
See?
Yeah. I listened to that Alma Mater episode. I texted Alex right after.
It's true. Yeah, that game's a mess. Anyway, so first impressions, Sean, what were your first impressions of Pan Am the game?
You know, all right. I love Mad Men. Mad Men is one of my favorite shows of all time. It's obviously it puts a certain sheen on a very problematic time period, and I understand that. But I don't know. I kind of like this. Like, can you imagine like having to dress up to go on an airplane? Like now you just wear pajamas. You know what I mean? There's this certain
Yeah.
romanticism with this period, I think, and not entirely necessarily deserved, but whatever. So I heard it was this game from Prospero Hall, which I've had mixed results with, so to speak, but I realized that there's a very broad appeal that this company has, and I think that they do a very good job of being accessible. And so I knew this was worker placement. I knew this was an economic game, like a light economic game. And so I was relatively optimistic. Those were my expectations.
Dan, did you have any expectations or thoughts going into this one?
Yeah, because it was Prospero Hall, because it was in the big box stores, because it was a cool theme, I was one of those things where it's like, I want this to be as good as I hope it's going to be. Which sometimes can be bad, because in those instances, sometimes you put it too high on a pedestal, and sometimes gameplay doesn't match up to what you hope. So I was very hopeful for this, which again is not necessarily always the best thing to do, but that's how I feel about Prospero Hall. The theme, everything was speaking to me.
So for me, my first question that came to mind with this was why? Because there's a question of, right, is this tied to the TV series, Pan Am? Are they trying to play off of that? And the answer is probably not. That only ran for one season, 14 episodes a number of years ago, almost a decade ago at this point. So it's not that. It's not based on a sudden surge of interest in airline travel. So I didn't understand the rationale for the game existing, but certainly the reputation of the company, solid. And I like planes as a theme. I enjoy airplanes and air travel. So I had decent expectations, but I think there was an element of befuddlement with the theme of this game and kind of its existence. So we'll talk about theme later, of course, but that's where I was coming to the game from. That was the place.
Holy cow. Pan Am, the TV series, debuted in 2011.
Yeah.
I've never seen it. I remember seeing the previews for it. It had Margot Robbie and Christina Ricci. I remember thinking, oh, that looks interesting. I would probably like to watch that. I'll wait till a couple seasons have come out. And then, yeah, it was just the one season. I can't believe that was a decade ago.
Yeah, decade ago.
Holy cow. Okay,
Yeah,
anyway.
One of my first thoughts was, oh, I wonder if this is going to be anything like Airlines Europe, which was like one of those great games that's never going to get reprinted again and had stock and, getting roots. And it does have some similarities to that, even though it's still very different. So I was hoping like, well, since you can't get your hands on that anymore, maybe this will kind of like, fulfill that.
Yeah. In any case, rules. This game was really easy to learn. I learned it from the rule book. I also learned it from one of many readily available rules videos out there. I don't think it did. Dan, you didn't do a rules video for this, did you?
I didn't do an official rules school, but with games of this weight, usually my overview, you can almost learn how to play everything except exceptions.
Dan, I didn't end up watching your video. I'm sorry to say. It wasn't an intentional snub, but
you're fired, Alex.
Yeah, sorry. But I learned it from kind of watching that video and then from reading the rule book. But honestly, I didn't really need the video. The rule book itself is really well done, as a lot of elements of this game are. Was that your guys' experience as well?
Yeah, I love the rule book. It's clean. The graphics are good. They got little tips with little like thematic looking, pilots and crew members. And I love how they started with important concepts to grasp and then went through the flow. They had a nice example in the back of the expansion, how it works. This rulebook was fantastic.
Yeah, and so like you mentioned, Dan, they wanted you to know those important concepts up front before they got into like the turn structure, which is why I did that too in the rules explanation. Like understanding how you claim routes, I think is really important. So I learned this game from our buddy Eugene. I actually played this for the first time at like early on in the pandemic. So, I mean, we're talking like April, May 2020 online. Eugene taught it to us. It was one of those games, like every now and then there's a game where someone starts teaching me the rules or I'm reading the rule book and I'm already like, I get the whole game like early on. Like I get what's going to come next. I get like, there's just a certain intuitiveness to it, which I think is really cool. So then playing it in the last week and a half, having not played it for a good 6 months or more, the rule book was excellent. Like in the rule book, like I just had to like skim through it real quick because it all came back to me after one play 6 or 7 months ago. which I think is it says something good about, again, the intuitiveness and just how the game is streamlined in a lot of ways. I don't know. I think it was a solid rule book. I think even if I had just had to learn it from the rule book, I think it would have been totally fine. And this was a game where when I taught it to Raquel, there weren't a lot of rules questions. She picked up on it really quickly. I think it's a solid rule book.
Well, and to the game's credit in terms of learnability, one, it puts those concepts up front, which I think it makes all the difference in the world. But two, this is a game where it has a good amount of depth. Like, it has enough depth to be interesting for gamers. But I could absolutely teach this game to my dad once we're through all of this, and intend to. He loves it. He loves airplanes, plane travel. I think he'll really dig the theme of this, and the game itself is really easily teachable, and that's reinforced in large part by art and components. The art and components of this game, I think for the price point of the game, are stellar by and large. There are some minor quibbles I'll talk about, but by and large, dripping in theme, and the whole look of this game just has this classic aesthetic that, again, fits the theme of the game. But man, oh man, does this thing look good on the table in my book. I don't know. What did you guys think?
I'm with you. I mean, nothing more to add. You just said it all. It looks what it's supposed to look like, and it invokes a feeling from you when you sit at the table that it's like, I feel like I'm transported to that time frame. It does a great job.
Yeah, I agree. You know, I like how the board is laid out. It's not your standard map of the Earth. It's sort of a top, like a north down view, and so it's interesting. I like that the destination cards all have different art for the particular city. I like the planes themselves. So there's 4 planes, and they're like little small. I forget what they're called. The little clippers or something like
that. There's tri-motors, clippers.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then like the 4th one is a jet, and I think it's a cruiser is the 3rd one. And they're all very distinct. Well, let me rephrase that. They're not very distinct. They're distinct-ish. 1 versus 4, you can tell the difference. What's very nice is that there are little lines on the tips of each wing, 1, 2, 3, or 4, to help distinguish. When a size 2 and a size 3 plane are on routes on the other side of the board, it's a little bit hard to distinguish, but not the end of the world. And ultimately, it doesn't matter what the plane is; it matters what the route is. So for example, if I have a level 3 plane, I could still use it to claim a level 2 or level 1 route. So not super important that you be able to distinguish across the board, because really you're just looking at the route level. But no, I think the production on this, and again, especially because of the retail price, like, it is ridiculous. I could see this being a $60, $70 game and no one batting an eye.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. This is kind of, back in the early days of the Dukes of Dice, there was a Watchdog Duke Alex. The Watchdog is sleeping on this one because just in terms of value, for what the MSRP is on this, it is absurdly good in terms of that trade-off. I will say this too, Sean, in terms of quibbles, the 1 versus 2 size difference was not always immediately apparent to me. Mm-hmm. And it becomes necessary to see when I think it would be unreasonable for a price point to expect double layered player boards. I just think it's not something that's likely to happen. I know they're much harder to produce, much more expensive to produce. But anytime you have an income track like that's key to determining things in the game, it's nice if you have somewhere where it can kind of sit and you know it's not going to get bumped or moved or whatever else. The benefit that this game has is it's super easy at any given point to audit exactly how much income you should be getting.
Yep.
It's airports plus value of routes.
Yep.
Easy, no problem. The trick is, because the 1s and 2s look so similar to each other or close enough, it can sometimes, it gives you a little bit of pause where you have to be like, okay, what do I actually have? It just adds that little bit of extra difficulty that would have been nice to avoid. It's not a game-breaking thing by any means, and again, even the multi-layered player board part is fixed in some ways by the fact that it's auditable. You can see exactly where your income is supposed to be, but it's just a small thing. I'll also say the coins themselves are not, it's just typical kind of chipboard coins. They're nothing special. They don't look super interesting or cool, much like the rest of the game. But it wasn't anything that dragged it down. And I think by and large, I agree. This is a really well produced game. So I mentioned that this thing has enough depth and yet is accessible. Dan, did you find that to be the case, that it had enough depth to it to be interesting for gamers, but still had that accessibility? Did it walk that line?
Yeah, I mean, that's what Prospero Hall is known for, right? They're known for being able to get into mass market stores, but have the games be somewhat learnable to people that aren't necessarily into hobby games. I think this towed that line perfectly. Is the game sort of a welcoming game or a gateway game? I think it's a little past that, because usually with those games, I'm like, could a person that's not into board games buy this game at Target or wherever, and learn it from the rules? Yeah, possibly, but I don't know. I still think this is sort of like a next step game. Like, I would probably play Ticket to Ride before this with other players, because it's just a little bit easier, a little bit less to think about. But this game has payoff, because for not that much more complexity, you're getting a lot more depth.
Well, and the depth comes in I like this fact that the event deck, to me, is a lot of what makes this game great, because it has you in this position of, what do I do in terms of cash flow? How much extra cash am I holding on to? Is this price going to go up dramatically? Is it going to come down dramatically? How do I ensure I have enough to expand my routes appropriately, but also make sure I'm buying up stock at a low price so that I don't get priced out of things, because prices can absolutely jump really quickly in this game. It didn't happen to me, but I know the cards are there where it could happen.
The event deck for sure is what plays a lot of the replayability of the game, because every time you play, different things are going to happen. You're going to have to react, and I love that aspect. I mean, from a gameplay perspective, there's so much to like it, right? Essentially, it's worker placement, at the same time auctioning. It's got that Cyclades style thing where you put your worker down and someone can outbid you, and it just comes back to you, and you get to bid somewhere else. I love that mechanism, and it works really well here. I mean, you're literally teaching people how to play worker placement without them even knowing it, right? And auctions at the same time, right? But it's also an economic game, but it's also a little bit of an area control game. You're trying to be, it's got a lot of like magic behind the scenes that if you're just not into the board game hobby, you've never played anything but Uno, and you walk into this and someone teaches it you, like, you're going to be having an experience that is very hobby-like without knowing all of the verbiage and stuff. They're just going to know that, wow, this is interesting. And then you can point out all of the reasons why. You guys used to do something called building blocks.
Oh, yeah.
And I used to love that segment. And this game is building blocks for so many games.
Yeah. No, I think that's probably right.
Sean, for you, is it deep enough? Because that was my biggest fear. Was I knew I liked it a lot, but I worried that it wouldn't have quite enough meat on the bone for you to really love it.
Oh, heck yeah. No, this game is super deep for the relative complexity. Like, I really dig this game. I mean, I really dig this game. So, like, looking at the event deck is amazing, right? Because you'll have games with event decks where it's just, here's 50 cards all shuffled together and let's see what happens. And there's a certain level of randomness that might be satisfying or it might be really frustrating. But this event deck is very specifically tailored. Like I mentioned, there are 7 rounds and there are 4 cards. I think it's 4. There are 4 cards per round.
Yes.
Right? So each round you're getting a card that's kind of tailored for that round, which I think is very interesting. And yeah, it's like you mentioned cash flow. Like, I think that's the hardest part about this game is how many stocks do I need to buy? And especially if you're the first player, obviously first player is great because you get the first choice in worker placement. And by the way, first player rotates every subsequent round. But then you're like, well, I'm the first player to buy stocks. Am I going to kind of set the tone for the stock purchase round, or am I going to judge this poorly and overbuy or underbuy? And if I'm overbuying, it's because, hey, the stock price is at 8 right now. And then, oh no, next round, I had no idea, but it gets reset to like 5 or 6 or whatever. And that's the worst feeling, especially if you bought a bunch and everyone kind of went a little bit easy. No, I think there's a tremendous number of decisions to make throughout this game, and very meaningful decisions. Everything you do is meaningful. I mean, we've reviewed some games recently where it's just like, well, you just do stuff and things happen. And I don't feel that at all. At different player counts, you're gonna have different number of engineers. You have 5 at 2 players, and I think you have 3. Is it 3 at 4?
It scales 1 down at each player count up, but I don't know. Is it as few as 3?
I think it is. So that's my quarantine caveat. So I played it at 4 online 6 or 7 months ago, and then the last plays were only at 2. But what I'll say though is I definitely think it's better at higher player counts.
Yeah.
I didn't hate it at 2, but I don't think I'm going to play it at 2.
Right.
Raquel liked it quite a bit, but I think there's a bit more interesting decisions, especially with the stock purchases and the cash flow. In a 2-player game, you're kind of just doing whatever the other player's doing just for parity's sake. When you've got 3 or 4 players, there's a lot more that can kind of happen.
I agree. It's not bad with 2 players. It still works and it works well, but 2 players, that player count where there's so many games that are designed for 2 players that you can't expect a game like this to excel past those types of games. So if you have a small collection of games and you want a game that will be fine and work really well at 2, but also with more players, and this is it. But it's not gonna I'm not gonna pull this off before my core 2-player design games, right?
I'd agree with that. It's certainly one that I think 3 or 4 is the way to go. I haven't played it with 4. I could envision it being nice. The competition you'd get for some of those worker placement spots is helpful. I think a lot of what has this game thrive so much is in its scarcity. You only have so many workers to do so many spaces on the board. You can't do everything you want to do. And there's a risk of you over-investing or overbuying, of building up your fleet too large, because once Pan Am buys out that route from under you, you get the plane back. You get to use it for some other route. And I've certainly found myself at the end of the game with more planes than I really need. In Abby's first play of this, she got too many destination cards. She was just overstocked on destination cards, had wasted too many actions in that area of the board, and had easy route building, but wasn't taking advantage of burning those cards to get routes. But that's an interesting decision in and of itself. Mm-hmm. How are you going to build out your routes? Are you going to try and build as thin as possible, leaving yourself open to needing to take those actions later in the game when they're less valuable? Or are you going to have an abundance and hope to kind of build a network as you go? Keeping in mind that timing is everything in this game, and in the last turn of my most recent play of this, Abby bought out the 1-4 route that I was set up to take. I was completely locked out of it because I didn't place in the route space at the right time. I didn't assume she was going there, and she kind of completely snuck up on me. But the game allows you to do that, right? The destination cards are out in the open, but because the board is sort of this disconnected network, you don't have to build your network next to each other. It allows people to kind of sneak in and make those kinds of moves, which I think is really satisfying and interesting in this game. It thrives in the scarcity of spaces, of routes, but also in the abundance of ways you can do things. So I think it has that, again, balance. It balances everything with this, and there are more layers than meet the eye. You don't have to understand all of them to enjoy the game.
I love the routes that you just talked about, because we were just talking about this as a building block, and it's like if you've introduced this to someone like Ticket to Ride, then you're like, oh, well, look, there's multiple ways you can gain a route. You could have an airport, or you could have the actual city and just have one card, but you don't have to discard it. Or I could have a card of that region, but it doesn't have to be that city. Or I could use 2 that match that don't match this region. So it takes what someone's might be used to playing for the Ticket to Ride route building, and it takes that to the next level with so many more options as to how you can build your routes.
Yeah, I think it's super clever in that way. And talking about Alex with the timing aspect of it, especially in a higher player count game, I think that directive worker placement spot where you're getting these cool cards, I compared them in the rules intro to intrigue cards in Lords of Waterdeep, where there's also sort of a bonus because in Lords of Waterdeep, you're able to take an extra action with those Waterdeep harbor spots or whatever it's called. But more than that, let's say that going to the next round, I'm going last. but I know we're going to be competing for a particular route. I've got what I need to do this level 4 route. You've got what you need, but you're going to be first in player order. Well, maybe I give up some other action to get a directive card first, because that's going to let me have priority placement in the next round. And that's a legitimate thing to think about. If you're just counting on, oh, I'm going to be first player next round, I don't need to worry about it, and then someone takes a directive spot and now they're going to go first. Like there is so much going on in this game. And from my very first play of it, I was like, this game is excellent. And there is one game that, speaking of building blocks, where this almost feels like a building block to another particular game. I have a very specific game in mind. I asked Raquel, I said, what does this seem like a slightly simpler version of? And she got it. She and I were on the exact same page. Any guesses, gentlemen? No? Power Grid.
Oh.
This seems like a great building block to Power Grid. So there's a bit of network expansion, somewhat like you mentioned, Alex. You don't have to expand from your network, but that there's certainly, in certain respects, there's a desire to do that. Like, especially if you can build a particular network that's right in the advance of Pan Am. Like, and it's interesting, you want to be bought up by Pan Am. Like sometimes you want income, and so you want to have routes. There's an event card that says double your income. And so it's like, okay, don't buy me out this round, Pan Am. But for the most part, you want that to happen. There's a bit of auctioning. Obviously, there's no worker placement in Power Grid, but there was very much just sort of a feel of, boy, if someone's not ready for Power Grid, I can start them off with Pan Am and then kind of transition to Power Grid.
Yeah. That's a really good point. Yeah, because, I mean, you got the auction kind of built into the worker placement as well, right? So you've got that aspect of Power Grid, the route building, the route building, things like that. Yeah, I think that's a really good... You brought up the directive cards. I love those. And the coolest thing about those is, like, they all trigger in different spots. Like, you might be able to upgrade your plane, right? During the resolution phase of when you would do that. And, it's phase C. Or you might, like, when you pull your engineer back, pay $2 to place an airport, right? So you're basically getting like 2 actions for 1. You could sell one of your stocks to Pan Am during the expansion phase. Or you might, my favorite one is at the end of the game, you could basically buy a stock at no cost, which really screws people up because they think they got you. And you're like, no, I can buy a stock, end of the game. Those directive cards are great. My only minor quibble with those is they are quite random. I wish they would have figured out a way to, like, after you get it, like, and tie it to something else. Like, if you have a certain amount of planes, or you have at least a 4 plane or a 3 plane, draw 2 and keep 1. Or, so that way it would, like, focus your strategy a little earlier in the game towards something. And then, I don't know. It might have made it too complex for what they were trying to do. But, like, as a gamer, I'm like, it was a little random. I wish it was a little bit more, you can kind of choose your adventure as what strategy you want to use. But that'd be my own, like, nitpick on the directive cards.
I had another nitpick with them, which is in a couple of cases, not every case, but in a couple of cases, it was slightly unclear to me whether it was do this as your action or do this in addition to your action. So, I don't know. Broadly speaking, though, I think a home run.
You guys both talked about how much you love the event cards. And in fact, the event cards is the one thing in this game that there's parts of it that I strongly dislike, and it's the only part of the game I dislike.
Really?
And specifically, it's for the round 7 event cards. Because this game is a lot about outmaneuvering your opponents, being more efficient with your cash, being more efficient with your movements, and trying to get bought out by Pan Am to get the money to then buy the stock and get ahead, because that's how you win, right? But like in my last play of this, the round 7 cards, it's just one of those things where, like, I had a huge lead, because I was able to get in front of Pan Am and predict where they were going to go and do everything right and get in there. And I paid for it, but I was ahead in stock by quite a bit, right? And when they buy up your routes, what are you doing? Not only are you getting the money that you then probably spend on stock, but you're getting the plane back, which is reducing your income. So the players that aren't getting bought up have usually a bigger income, right? And so, Sean, you talked about this earlier. One of the cards in the last round is double your income. Well, if all the other players have not been getting bought out as much and they double their income, they have enough money at the end of the game to then buy as much stock to then come back, right? from a huge standstill, which some people might think is really good, right? One of them is like, so the income being double, at the start of the phase, you can sell all your routes to Pan Am. So like you could not even care about Pan Am and straggle by and cut and claw, and then on the last round, sell all your routes to Pan Am and come back and win. And that is cool that there are multiple strategies, but at the same time, you never know which one of these cards are going to come up. So like it's quite random, where it's like, okay, I could either like try to get a bunch of routes, which seems to be the name of the game, and to get in front of Pan Am and get bought up and then buy a bunch of stock. Or if I don't have that, I like the fact that you still are in the game, but at the same time, you don't know what that's going to be. So you really don't know if, like, it's almost like, let's flip the card and see if I have a shot or not in the 7th round. And it was the only part of this game I disliked.
To me, it's a feature, not a bug. Like, I like the fact that it allows people, if you've gotten beaten down or it looks like you're way behind or whatever else, it does give you that glimmer of hope that, oh, this one came up and it actually validates my strategy. It validates this network that I've built out over the course of the game. I like that it gives an avenue for that.
I feel like it's by accident, though. It's like, I haven't played as well as you, but oh, wow, we got the random card that's going to allow me to beat you in the last round. I feel like I don't know. I don't like it as much.
What I like, though, is it opens up diversity of strategy.
That's true.
Like, it opens up the ability to build out a network that has a solid base of income with a lot of airports, which is what I did the last game, versus Abby, who aggressively got bought out. I mean, every route of hers got consistently bought out, but she burned low on cash. Like, she didn't have the cash base as a result, and stock stayed at a low enough price over the course of the game that was able to work out well for me.
But if you go for that strategy, knowing the 4 cards that are in the round 7 event deck, and you go for that strategy, and you're like, I'm going to go up big in income, big in roots. I'm not going to try to get bought up too much. I'm going to take that strategy. And then round 7 comes, and it says, when you draw a directive card this round, you may sell 1 route to Pan Am. There's no way you're coming back and winning. So you're like building a strategy over something, and the randomness still might make it so there's no way you can win. I love the aspect of having multiple strategies. I just don't want a random card flip at the end of the game give me a 25% chance that the strategy I worked all game for it's either going to make me win or lose.
I just kind of looked it up online, and it looks like there's some agreement with you on BGG, Dan. There's some house rules that people have come up with, like reveal the round 7 event card early so people can plan for it.
I would love that. Even if it's at the beginning of the game or sometime halfway through, if you reveal that card so you know what strategy to actually shoot for, then I think I would like it. But to have it be so random and so swingy was the only part I strongly disliked about the game.
Here's the thing, though. If this is going to be a building blocks game, if this is a game that you want to use to introduce people to the hobby, you want folks to at least have a chance of coming out on top, even if it's their first play. And it might be random and it might be swingy, but I think, again, it's a feature, not a bug. It's something that it opens up the accessibility of it. I get from a hardcore standpoint, from a hobby gamer standpoint, why it's not perfect or ideal or what folks would want.
I get that. If you're cleaning someone's clock, which I would never do when I play with somebody for the first time anyways, but if you were just beating someone down pretty bad, and you're like, oh, don't worry about it. Just, you know what, focus on some routes, because in the last round, 50% of the cards are really going to help you out, right? And then it comes there, and you get the one about directive. Well, they're not going to have a good experience, and it's just luck. I don't mind randomness in the games. I just feel like it's so crucial to whether you win or you lose in this game that it shouldn't be as random.
I didn't find that with my plays, but I could see how that could happen, for sure. Theme. So we talked a lot about how the art and components, I think, are really well done in this, but thematically, I mean, did this hit the mark theme-wise? For me, it absolutely did. I mean, for me, because of the nature of the art and components, because of this feel of kind of building out a route, it does have that thematic tie. I think where it loses it slightly is, as an airline, I build off of a hub for most part. And in this game, you can build off of a hub, and you might even be incentivized in some ways to do that. But you can also build out the most random routes. I might have a midway to Hawaii route, and then also 4 South America routes, and also offering my customers a flight from Rome to London, or whatever the case might be. You don't have to build out a thematic map, as it were. You don't have to build out a connected thing, which I think for the game itself works really well. It's a slight thematic disconnect. Not one that really pulls me out of the experience, but certainly one where I could. It doesn't click as well in my mind just slightly because of that. Does that ring true for either of you guys?
I can see that. I didn't find it to be a supremely thematic game necessarily, but I could see how you might. And certainly there's a certain level of immersiveness from the art, from the graphic design. And I don't know. I mean, it just felt very much like a worker placement game. I think and an economic game. And I think the idea of Pan Am gobbling up your routes, that was probably the most thematic thing. And kind of wanting to be a company that you're not necessarily trying to make the best airline. You're just trying to be attractive enough to the bigger fish to get eaten up. Like, yeah, I find that kind of amusing and kind of thematic.
Yeah, no, I think the theme matched quite a bit. I mean, it's what was happening, right? Like it was gobbling up all these airlines, and I thought it worked really well. It helps teach the game as well.
Yeah, very cool. All right, Guild Thoughts. We have just one from Sylvain Lacroix, who says, I was a bit caught by surprise by how much I liked it. While not being new, the worker placement auction concept works great with that game, and I really enjoyed the integration of the theme. You want to be bought by Pan Am to make money and eventually try to buy shares of the company. The components are pretty great for a game that cost $32 Canadian, though it's currently on sale for $25. I'm sorry, that's a U.S. price, $32 U.S. Found it on sale for $25, which I believe from Miniature Market in person is about how much I paid for it. This show not brought to you by Miniature Market. I'm just throwing that out there. Anyway, he continues. While not being a game that I'll play 50 times, if you are, I would give it a high 4, almost a 5, but I'm always harsh on my ratings. Which brings us to final thoughts. We rate things here at the Dukes of Dice on a 6-point scale, as you just heard. 1 being terrible, real bad. 6 being amazing, contender for the top 10. My guess is we'll all end up somewhere in between here, but on the higher end of that scale. Dan, do you want to go first? Kick us off?
Sure. For all the reasons I mentioned earlier, I think this is truly a standout next step game that puts everything together well. And for all those reasons, it to me is a great game and will really turn down a play of it. So for me, it's a solid 5.
Very good. Succinctly stated, Sean, what are you giving this?
Wow, yeah, I really dig this game. I wish this played better at 2 than it does. And that could hold it back somewhat in terms of a final score. The other thing holding it back is, again, that soft comparison to Power Grid. Power Grid's a 6. Power Grid's an amazing game. Also, I'm not crazy about Power Grid at 2, and there is the Robots expansion that lets you play it at 2, but don't play it at 2. It's not worth playing at 2. But still, it's not Power Grid. And again, maybe that comparison's unfair. I'm going to give this a very solid, if not an incredibly high 5. Alex, if there were one time I wanted to give a decimal, it would be for Pan Am. But I'm not, because I'm restrained, I am mature, and I am focused. There's no decimals in the Duchy. So I'm going to give this a very solid 5. A great game. Will rarely turn down a play of it.
I'm a little stunned, Sean, that you're actually slightly higher on this one than I am.
Yeah.
Ultimately.
It's a great economic game. A great light economic game.
Yeah. And I agree with your assessment of it. And I think it checks a lot of boxes. I think this is one you can play with gamers and have a great time. And I think this is one, maybe not the first game you'd use to introduce people to the hobby. I think that's correct. But one that you could use to build their interest and enjoyment, especially if they're already into airplanes as a theme or if they really like Ticket to Ride. This is another next step. As mentioned, this is one I fully anticipate playing with my dad at some point, hopefully in the near future, vaccines, all that fun stuff. So as a result of that, this one gets a very solid, not high 5, but a very solid 5. Great game, will rarely turn out of play of it. Very, very little that's wrong with this one. It's just, it doesn't quite hit the heights of a 6 for me, but not a ton negative to say about it, if I'm honest. So, yeah, 5's all over the place. It's got a 15 from the trio here. Dan giving this one a 5. Sean giving this one a high 5, not a 5.5, a high 5. And I also give Pan Am a 5.
You are listening to the Dukes of Dice, proud members of the Dice Tower Network. For other great shows in the network, check out dicetowernetwork.com. Back to Alex and Sean for this week's Duke's Double Take.
Next up, we're looking back on a Duke's Quadruple Take from episode 219, Monochromatic Wolfgang Pack, where not Sean and I, but Dan and I reviewed 2 games, and we were really consistent with how we reviewed both of them, interestingly enough. The first one we'll talk about is Fox and the Forest Duet, the cooperative implementation of the 2-player trick-taking game Fox and the Forest. And at the time, I gave this one a 4. I said, look, this one isn't anywhere near as good as Fox and the Forest, but Abby enjoyed it, and although it's not a top-of-mind 2-player game, it's not going anywhere. Small box size, it'll stay in the collection. Dan, you gave this one a low 3. You were very close to unleashing the 2, but you didn't quite do it. You said it didn't have any significant issues, really, but you just weren't super excited about it, and there were some thematic elements to this that you were really got in the woodwork for you, and you were not stoked about. Dan, have you played this one since?
Nope, it's gone. I gave it to somebody else.
Does this drop to the status of, I'm not gonna, game has merit but has significant issues? Are you gonna unleash the 2, or are you sticking with low 3?
I don't think it had significant issues. It just doesn't stand out enough, and it went away. So it's definitely not climbing anything.
I have played this once since, I believe, and it's fine. It's fine. It's, I think, on the lower end of a 4. I'm not getting rid of it, but I'm not necessarily super excited about it, and I'm probably far more likely to pull out and play Fox and the Forest than I would Fox and the Forest Duet. So, Sean, have you played Fox and the Forest Duet, by the way?
I have. And Alex, I'm glad to know that you care about if I've played it or not, and what and you care about what I have to think about it, because I was racking my brain. And by the way, I like Fox and the Forest Duet, but I think I agree that Fox and the Forest is better. I'd probably give this a solid-ish 4. Yeah. But I was racking my brain. I'm like, wait, why didn't I review these? Because I've played both of these games. And then I remembered why. Do you remember why?
I don't remember exactly why.
Am I incorrect? Wasn't this the episode that followed the week of D&D that almost destroyed the Dukes of Dice?
Oh, it could be. It certainly would be about in that time frame. It's possible.
I think it was.
Oh man,
was it?
So if I'm thinking of the moments where the Dukes of Dice almost fell apart over the years, and that's up in the top 3. The other one would be that
was number 1. That had to be number 1.
Was that number
right?
1? Okay,
I think so.
Well, there was that other time where I had told you I was recording, but I showed up and you had brought in other people. Do you remember what I'm talking about?
No.
This was back in Albuquerque.
Oh,
when we were both in Albuquerque.
Yeah, I vaguely remember that.
And I showed up and you're like, I didn't hear from you. What's going on? I was like, well, I'm here to record. And you're like, I'm already recording. I was like, what the heck is going? All right.
That was like year 1 or year 2.
Oh, it was very early days.
Very early.
Yeah. Anyway. All right. So you give this one a 4?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay. Wavelength. Next one we'll talk about. Wolfgang Warsch game. And I gave this one a 4 as well. I said, look, there's some quibbles. Some games were better than others. But this is one that the crowds I'd played it with, it was well loved. I didn't find it super amazing, and I think it suffered from expectations of the mind versus Wavelength. Dan, you gave this one a 3 or a 3.5. You weren't quite sure about it. You didn't think that it fit the not exciting part of a 3, but also it was one that is not part of your collection. Have you played this in any form since, Dan?
Nope, I still feel about the same. Again, that one was given away, and so yeah, I would say it's still a 3 for me.
So yeah, an even more solid 3. So no hedging, 3 versus 3.5.
Nope.
All right. I am sticking right where I was with this one. It's a solid 4. It's not going anywhere anytime soon. It has been requested from time to time, and I've also played it online during the pandemic, so it's one that has stuck around, but it's certainly not any higher than that. Sean, have you played Wavelength?
Yeah, I've played it. I wasn't crazy about it. It's certainly not my favorite Warsch game. I would probably give a 3. Game is okay, not exciting. Will play in the right situation? Hold on, let me think about that. Will I? I'd play it. I'd still play it. So I'm not gonna give it a 2. I mean, it's not a terrible game by any stretch, but wasn't crazy about it. So I'd give it a 3.
All right. The Guild had one thought on this. BJ from Board Game Gumbo says, I had not played Wavelength during the first review, but since gave a copy to my niece for Christmas and played with family after Alex taught us this game online. Wow, have we had so much fun playing Wavelength. To me, it would be a perfect addition to any con library, and I would love to try it at the end of a night when we are all a little sleep deprived. Solid 4 in my book. And I'd say that's about where I feel on it, too. I'm right with her with BJ.
Can I say that party games, when it's late at night and you're sleep deprived, are a lot of fun?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. They're perfect con games just for that kind of moment. And, yeah, this would definitely be in that category. Just One was perfect for that kind of mode. We're Doomed, I think, works really well for that kind of situation. Yeah, I agree with you. Well, very good. That's the Duke's quadruple take. Nothing really changes. It's Fox in the Forest Duet stays at a 4 for me, stays at a 3 for Dan, gets a 4 from Sean. Wavelength, 4 from me, 3 from Dan, 3 from Sean. And that'll do it for this section, but we have one more thing before we go. The best of the rest, the names we did not pick, and there were some interesting discussions on this one. So, first off, this is not part of the official top 6, but I did want to read it and mention that I love seeing a good guild collaboration. King Splendor and Baker Mitchell collaborated on this lovely poem. I do not like flying with Pan Am. I do not like them, Game Boy Dan. Would you play this game about a fox? Would you take these tricks out of this box? Do you want to play a game about a train? No? Perhaps you'd like a game about a plane. So, nice little Green Eggs and Ham reference, but not part of obviously the top 6 because it's not. That would be a very long episode name.
Made me hungry, though.
Did it? Okay. All right. Well, fair enough. Let's talk about the best of the rest, though. Joshi and Gurr came with, and this is one that's better visually, but it's flies, and then arrows kind of pointing each direction runs. The idea being he set up a wavelength, so flies is on one end of the wavelength, runs is on the other end of the wavelength, and so planes on one side, fox is on the other. It incorporated all three in a really clever way, but again, is better as a visual name than necessarily one that you would read out loud.
And Alex, are you going to be available to explain all of these? Because some of them need some explanation, and like that one.
You want me to just kind of go through all of them?
You know what, Alex? I am more than confident in your ability to do so.
This is not traditional for the Dukes of Dice. We like exchanging and sharing the spotlight, but Sean has granted me the authority to overrule that and just jump in there myself. So I'll talk about WoW. This was referencing. We talked last week about the one-word name challenge, and Francois Miley took this one on. And he referenced, and it was a stretch for a lot of these, but I appreciated the effort nonetheless. He said WoW was an Icelandic airline, and in fact, it was the last one to offer an international flight in St. Louis, and it does not exist anymore. And yeah, there are no international flights out of St. Louis. We were a TWA hub, by the way, not a Pan Am hub, and TWA doesn't exist anymore, and we're not really a hub for much of anything other than kind of Southwest. So WoW is probably the word you would say when you read your mind or guess your crazy answer in Wavelength. And wow, a 2-player trick-taking game. Or if you ever cross a fox family during a hike, you'd say, wow, that's pretty wowing. So that's how Francois tied in all of those for the name of WoW. Pretty good. All right, this had a chance. I think if it incorporated more of the games, incorporated guest and game we reviewed. There's also, it was a little hard to parse out, and I'm not accusing anyone of anything. I'm just going to mention the facts, okay? Baker Mitchell posted 3 names on the guild. He posted 3 names. Terapis, which I don't think I had a hard time saying that. He thought I would. He posted Bernoulli or Bernoulli's episode, referencing Daniel Bernoulli. Again, all very clever. But the one he had at the very top said Dan Am. Now, this happens on the guild from time to time, but immediately after, right below, Jimmy DM90 posted Dan Am. And we've had this kind of controversy before where it's kind of been unintentional or it's happened a day later or whatever else. But what was interesting about this one was I just noticed Baker Mitchell posted his at 9:32 a.m. It was edited for some reason, probably not for anything to do with this, but it was edited at 9:58 a.m. And Jimmy's was posted literally a minute later. I don't know. This was probably my runner-up for a name. But I just I don't know. Jimmy and Baker, maybe sort that one out. I'm curious what occurred there.
Can we ask Scott or find somebody that can give us the edit history to know what was what?
Maybe. Ultimately it doesn't matter. Like, it's not the name pick.
Or does
it's
it?
a top.
Or does it? Is this a
matter?
scandal that is actually going to bring down the Dukes of Dice?
Oh no. This is our yearly scandal that might end the show. I don't know. It's possible. All right. And next up, we have Doug Faust with The Game Boy Who Wouldn't Grow Up. And one, this fits Dan to a T anyway. But two, it's referencing not the airplane part of Pan Am, but the Pan part of Peter Pan, which is not what we're talking about at all. But I loved the effort to bridge it in there. So it made top 6 for that reason. Sean, what has you laughing so much?
It's just, I don't know. It's fine. Move on.
All right. And then finally, Jeremiah Brommer with 2 first-class tickets, please, referencing the duet in Fox and the Forest Duet and Pan Am. So there you go. The best of the rest, but not the one we picked. That'll do it, though. That's what we got. That's all we got. You did it, Dan. You earned your keep.
Nice. I'm glad I came back. I'm glad you had me back, by the way. And I'm glad when I heard when you text me and you're like, we're going to be reviewing Pan Am, I'm like, yes.
Yeah. Well, you mentioned, I think you told me this is one of your top games of 2020.
Yeah, it was in my top 10 of 2020 for sure. Yep, it made that video.
Well, and we didn't mention this in the review. I think it would have made my top 10 of 2020 as well, and certainly Sean's.
Top 5, at least top 5.
Top 2 for Sean, probably.
It was yes. I was gonna make
based on number of games
I was gonna
played.
keep reducing the numbers, and I'm like, well, that's not funny. Like, we could never mind. Anyway.
All right. In any case.
So Dan, congratulations on where you're at in the Kickstarter. Best of luck finishing strong. Again, we will put that link in the show notes. If people want to connect with you in any way, shape, or form, what are the best ways to do that?
Best way is just to go to GameBoyGeek.com, and then in the upper right, there's all the different places you can connect with me. Although I do want to say one more thing. I want to give you a little insider baseball here.
Oh.
We talked about Prospero Hall quite a bit, and Funko Games is doing a lot of the Prospero Hall stuff. I had a meeting with them yesterday, and I can't say a whole lot because it's under embargo, but I am just going to tell you that there's going to be a game coming out from Prospero Hall and Funko that is going to get announced in the next couple of months, and I think it's going to be their biggest and best game yet. And I think because of the theme alone, and from what I've seen, how the game plays with the theme, I think it's going to be what they're going to be known for. That's all I'll say.
Well, I don't care about that at all, Dan. What I care about is when Funko will announce their Game Boy Geek Funko Pop doll. That's what I care about. So let me know when that happens.
Oh my goodness gracious. No way.
So Dan, just to go back on that note, is this a theme I'm going to care about?
I'm not going to, it's under embargo, so I'm not going to give any more hints. I probably shouldn't even have given that hint, but that's all I'm going to say.
Okay.
So it's not, it's not reality show related. Okay. Cause that's all Alex cares about.
That's not even accurate.
You don't like any other IP of any sort.
Hockey.
Oh, great. Terrific.
Well, good. Well, I'll have to pick your brain on that off air. Cool. Well, Dan, thanks for joining us, and thank you to our listeners. Sean, take us out.
Yeah, yes, indeed. Thanks, everyone, for listening. We, as always, appreciate it. This has been episode 245. Thanks again to Matthew S. for his wonderful title, Frequency Flyer Miles. Until next time, this is Sean.
And Alex.
And Dan.
And Duke you later, everybody.
Thank you so much for listening to The Dukes of Dice. Today's episode was recorded in the Duchy on February 25th, 2021. Our theme music provided by Carbohydro M from his Prime Legacy album. The Dukes of Dice are a proud member of the Dice Tower Network. For other great board gaming podcasts, check out DicetowerNetwork.com. And for all ways in the Duchy, go to DukesOfDice.com. Find us on Twitter at Dukes of Dice. Join in conversations on our Board Game Geek Guild. Find us on Facebook and subscribe to our YouTube channel. Thanks to our sponsors, Arcane Wonders and Game Toppers LLC. You can learn more about Arcane Wonders' fine titles at arcanewonders.com and find out all you need to know about Game Toppers at GameToppersLLC.com. We'll see you back here in 2 weeks. Until then, game on!